All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight, presented by FanDuel here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope all of you guys are having a great week so far. Later today, we'll be coming out with number 5 in our power rankings, but I wanted to take a few minutes this morning to discuss the news coming out of Boston that Ime Udoka is likely, at a minimum, facing a year-long suspension from the Boston Celtics and is considering resigning. Now, up front, I am not going to talk about the alleged incident. We don't have enough details, and quite frankly, that's not my job. My job is to break down basketball, and so that's what I plan to do as it pertains to this incident. What we do know, however, is that resignation is a possibility, and that him being out for a year is a likelihood. So the Celtics, coming into this season, need to be proceeding as though Ime Udoka is no longer a member of the franchise. If he does end up coming back next year, fine, they can deal with that at that point. But right now they have to proceed as though he's gone for good. So before we can actually look at how it impacts this particular Boston Celtics team, we have to evaluate what Ime Udoka's value was to this team. Now, obviously, we're in the middle of our power rankings, and I'm doing number 5 today, and it's not the Boston Celtics. You can probably guess that they're pretty close to the top. We will be talking about them in depth as a basketball team next week. But before we get into any sort of in-the-weeds basketball stuff with that team, you can safely assume that because they brought back almost everybody from last year and traded for Malcolm Brogdon, who directly addressed a need for the roster with ball handling and is a damn good basketball player in this league on both ends of the floor. Just by looking at that, we can assume that this team will, at the very least, be in the hunt. And at the very least, is on the top tier of contenders. So this is a big-time news report from last night, a big-time report from Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania in terms of the impact that it has on the landscape of the league. For starters, it was one of the strangest reports that I had ever seen, just with the whole context of the way it came out last night. You had a feeling that there was something bigger going on underneath the surface. But again, we're not going to get into that. This is just a bombshell report that has a great deal of impact on the landscape of the NBA this year. So what is Ime Udoka's value to Boston? So I talked about this a lot when the Lakers hired Darvin Ham. Ime Udoka is one of the latest in a line of hirings that we've seen around the league that go away from a traditional approach. The traditional approach being hiring lifetime coaches, guys that are establishment guys that, you know, maybe worked in a film room for a while, maybe were an assistant for a while somewhere, maybe they came up through the college ranks, whatever it is, they have a coaching background that extends the vast majority of their life. And for whatever reason, that type of coach, in my opinion, has started in recent years to struggle to resonate and get buy-in from players. You know, I think that players tune out guys like that in a lot of different cases. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you've seen this new archetype of coach, and that's like former player, guy who played in the NBA for a very long time, who was kind of a gritty, tough type of personality that can look these players eye to eye and achieve buy-in. In the dregs of the regular season, when you're trying to play 82 times, when the games lack real urgency as it pertains to your situation, especially now that the league has exacerbated that problem by adding in the play-in tournament, when you factor all that stuff in, buy-in and commitment to playing hard, especially on the defensive end of the floor, carries a great deal of value. And I think getting that sort of thing from your head coach is the kind of thing that builds the habits that translate to the playoffs. So I don't think it's a coincidence that you've seen Ty Lue succeed in Cleveland and with the LA Clippers. I don't think it's a coincidence that you saw Jason Kidd and what he did with Dallas last year, getting a group of below average defensive players to buy in and commit to the defensive end of the floor in a way that they had not earlier in their career, finishing 7th in defensive rating last year. Ime Udoka taking a Boston Celtics team that is notoriously not tough, right? And turning them into a tough-minded team. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. And then Darvin Ham is the latest example of teams trying to go after that type of coach. I think that type of coach is working in the league. And I think that Ime Udoka deserves a lot of credit for the turnaround in Boston. I didn't start covering the Celtics until I started with the volume. And even then, we were just doing Lakers for like the first month, right? But as I started to cover the entire league in March or so, the Celtics had already kind of figured things out. The Celtics were already hitting their stride. But if you talk to Celtics fans who were watching them more religiously before that point, obviously, from the start of the season, Ime Udoka was hammering home the concept of toughness, calling them out in the media, being very boisterous in his criticisms, even in games, running out onto the floor at timeouts and yelling at guys and being hard on them. And for a while, it's not that it wasn't working, but for a while, the results weren't coming. But then all of a sudden, when things clicked for that Boston Celtics team, they started whooping everybody's ass. And if you talk to Celtics fans, they attribute a great deal of that to Ime Udoka, his commitment to more switching, and his commitment to toughness and breeding toughness within that group. So with him out of the picture, that concept of toughness now is being passed to the players. This Joe Mazzulla, who Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting should be the interim head coach. I don't know anything about him, obviously, but he can at least maintain scheme consistency from what they did last year, and that's good. But I don't think that he's going to resonate with the players in terms of toughness and accountability the way that Ime Udoka did. So that's Ime Udoka's value to Boston. That's what we have to consider first. So the pressure is on Tatum and Brown at this point to take the mantle of toughness and accountability. Jayson Tatum had a really rough NBA Finals after a pretty damn good first 3 rounds. I still think when you zoom out from that playoff run and you look at his scoring metrics and efficiency and how good he was on the defensive end of the floor, it was a really damn good playoff run. I remember saying during my player rankings that if you just assigned a different name to that playoff run, like if you said that was Kawhi Leonard who did that, and he hit the same shots at the same efficiency, defended the way that Jayson Tatum did, you guys would have called him a bona fide superstar who just had a rough NBA Finals, which has happened. Kawhi Leonard has had rough playoff series in his career. Kevin Durant has had rough playoff series in his career. That's what happened with Jayson Tatum in that playoff run. But he is largely responsible for losing to the Golden State Warriors. Like I said during the series and after the series, I think that the Warriors were the better team in the sense that in the way they played basketball, they played better basketball on both ends of the floor, but that the Boston Celtics had more talent. And that's true. I don't think even a lot of Warriors fans would disagree with me there. They were the more talented team. Steph Curry soundly outplayed Jayson Tatum in that series, and as a result, they were able to climb back from a 2-1 deficit and win the series in 6 games. So there's basketball pressure on Tatum to play better than he did last year. And most importantly, now there's toughness pressure on Tatum. He has to be the one that yells and screams at players when they don't do their job, that yells and screams at players when they wilt under physicality against teams that are trying to snatch their heart. He needs to be the driving force of their toughness. I don't know that a guy like Al Horford commands enough respect. I don't know that a guy like Marcus Smart commands enough respect. Jayson Tatum is that guy. He's the guy that needs to take that mantle of toughness and carry this team through this regular season and get them to where they need to go in the playoffs. Do I think this will impact the team? I think it's possible, but I think it's better than a coin flip chance that they'll be okay. And it's because I do think that they're battle hardened. I do think that they've been through a lot. I do think that they've experienced the pain of loss enough times to be scared of losing enough to do the right things. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think the Celtics are still going to be great, every bit as great as they could have been with Ime, and I'm going to give that credit preemptively to Jayson Tatum. I think this is going to be one of the best seasons of his career. I ranked him 6th in my power rankings because of how much respect I have for what he did in that playoff run. I think this is the year where Tatum steps up, grows as a leader, grows in toughness, and leads this team. And right now I'm like kind of 50-50 on who's going to win the Eastern Conference between Milwaukee and Boston. And I'm going to stay right there at that 50-50 shot, even with the Ime Udoka news, because that's how much credit I have for Jayson Tatum. All right, that's all I have for right now. I will be back later today with number 5 in our power rankings. As always, I appreciate your guys' support, and I'll see you then.